back office?
Absolutely. And I think it's really around this theme of why outsource anything, right? And one of the things that Richard told me and helped remind me about with EO, which Scale Factor is pretty well ingrained with EO. Our founder is a member. We work with the Austin chapter. But he said, you're talking to a group of some of the best salespeople in the world. And the fact is, you're good at growing your business, but how do you value your time? Is it going out there and winning new business, or figuring out better processes internally that allow you to go win more business and continue to grow and profit? How many people here got into business to file taxes? Nobody. Well, I mean, file other people's taxes, right? You didn't do it to file your own. So that's my point, is like, where's your time? What's the highest and best use of your time as an entrepreneur? And it's, in most cases, it's not doing something that's as simple as something that can be automated, like a task like classifying transactions, right? Classifying transactions is a rote manual task that can easily be outsourced, whether it's to the Philippines or to a technology that does it for you. The same thing can be said about really a lot of other functions, like running payroll. Going in and authorizing payroll is great, but actually having to do the bookkeeping associated with payroll, like what part of this payroll was employer taxes, what was employee, what was all taken out.
So let me ask you something. Let's drill this down into two buckets. In terms of the back office outsourcing, there's a component where there's a human being that's physically doing the work. Got it. And but there's also a part where the technology is doing the work. Can you kind of talk to us about, let's do the hard one first, technology. What kind of technology tools are out there that can help make this whole process of bookkeeping, back office accounting, be automated and easier?
Sure. The world we know really well is small business, right? So we're talking, in my definition, I'm talking specifically $1 million to $20 million companies. And those types of companies, barring some crazy complexity, are using something like QuickBooks Online for their general ledger. And a lot of people come to me and they say, QuickBooks Online automates my classification of transactions. It does to a certain extent, but I'm sure many of you have had to go into QuickBooks and retool the rules for how things are actually automated and classified. Technology can do that, but leveraging AI and a tool that can do that is where Scale Factor can fit in, and where some other technologies fit in as well. There are a lot of AI bookkeepers that have popped up. There's companies like Bookkeeper 360 and Zendu and others that compete in that space with Scale Factor. So those are the technologies that are taking over those rote manual tasks and really systemizing them and allowing you to in a way, set it and forget it, although that's not advisable. You always want to keep an eye on everything as much as you can.
I mean, what we find in a lot of accounting software, particularly QuickBooks, it may be worth your while to bring a consultant in and have them show you how to use the system to automate a lot of those processes. So for example, credit card processing, keeping track of your credit card transactions. You may or may not know it, but you can just do a direct download, a connection between QuickBooks and your credit card processing company, where the data just drops right into QuickBooks. And over time, it'll automatically be categorized. But the thing is that you can't trust that data they're going to capture everything. So there has to be an additional process where there's a reconciliation of the credit card balances in QuickBooks to the actual credit card statement, the same way you would do a reconciliation of your bank statements.
Exactly, and with that said, everybody in here, I'm sure, believes your business is unique, and it is in many ways, I'm sure. And what that also can boil down to is your general ledger, your accounts might be unique too, right? You might want to break down expenses in a really granular way, so you can see, okay, this was travel for client, or this was travel for internal training purposes, right? So in those circumstances, like Richard said, it won't always be super accurate from the outset when you put in some automation with QuickBooks or with Xero accounting general ledger systems. So there are those times when you need to bring in a company or a technology that can kind of help make that stuff more accurate.
Because QuickBooks has got a ridiculous amounts of bells and whistles that maybe you don't know. So it's important to actually sit with a professional and have them help you dope out what you really want to accomplish, and also for them to tell you what you don't know that you don't know. That's going to make the processes a lot easier. The other thing about QuickBooks is that for the stuff that it doesn't do well, there's other software packages that do it well that can marry with QuickBooks. So QuickBooks has got a decent inventory system if you're in the inventory business. But the thing is that if you have more sophisticated inventory needs, our advice is to identify a more robust inventory system and then create a bridge between QuickBooks and that inventory system where the inventory is tracked over here and then the summary data is automatically downloaded into QuickBooks and everything kind of stays in one place. For those companies that generate revenue using time and billing, where employees have to fill out timesheets, QuickBooks has got a decent time and billing system. But the thing is, if you want to go with a more robust platform, whereby your employees are able to enter time using their mobile phone, well, there's a platform called T-Sheets, which operates off of your mobile phone that drops right into QuickBooks. So yes, QuickBooks can do a lot of great things, but they can't do every single thing. And what they can't do.
What was that one called?
T-Sheets.
Harvest is another one.
And there's a bunch of them.
What's your recommendations for revenue recognition and recurring revenue?
It depends on the nature of what's causing your revenue recognition. So with recurring revenue, so in other words, let's say you have a client and you got the client on retainer, you're sending them a bill for $1,000 every month. Simple example. The cheap and easy, quick and dirty way of doing it is to just generate 12 invoices ahead of time on January 1 day in January, February, March, April, May, July, August, September, all the way through, up front. So in other words, if you sign a new client and client has a contract, you just hand the contract over to the bookkeeper and say generate 12 invoices for the entire year. That's the easy way of doing it. As opposed to every month you have to remember to generate a new invoice. That's a quick and easy way of doing it. In terms of revenue recognition, it's a matter of sitting with your accountant and having the accountant explain to you when you should be generating revenue, when you should be recording the revenue. Once you understand, the old revenue recognition, I think it was ASC 605, now it's 606. So you need to really understand the new components of 606 and how it applies to you for revenue recognition. Once you understand it, that's the hard part. And in terms of, then you have to train your staff in terms of when to recognize revenue. So for example, under the new standards, revenue is based upon, if you ship product, it's based upon the ship date as opposed to the delivery date. Yeah. So now you have to rejigger QuickBooks, rejigger being the technical term, to now generate the invoice on the ship date as opposed to the delivery date. So the hard part about it is understanding the rules. The easy part is getting the system to conform to the rules. That's my recommendation.
And with recurring revenue, let's say you're taking that on credit card, there are systems that link into QuickBooks Online or into other technologies that link into QuickBooks Online, like SkillFactor and others, like Stripe and Zuora, right, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, that you set up the invoicing schedule and it pops those invoices out and automatically bills your client if you have that retainer or if it's like a SaaS subscription type thing.
And on payroll, one of the biggest issues that we have with clients is...
What was that other one? Zara?
Zuora, Zuora.
And one of the biggest issues that we have with clients is really understanding their cost of goods sold, cost of revenue. So for example, if you're in the service business and the cost of revenue, the majority of the cost of revenue is labor, well then you need to have a system in place whereby your labor costs are allocated properly between cost of goods sold and G&A. But what are you? First of all, you have to define what your labor costs are. Your labor cost is not just payroll. It's also payroll taxes, it's also health insurance, and some people actually drill down and they do workers' comp insurance. Well, that can be a little bit of an accounting nightmare every 2 weeks to do that. The trick to that is if you're using like an outsourced service like an ADP or a Paychex, what you can do is you can actually have them set up in the system departments where everybody's put in a department. Now, a complicated situation is, let's say Fred Jones works for you and he works in shipping, but he also does your bookkeeping. So there's a component of Fred that's in cost of goods sold, there's a component of Fred that's in G&A. They can actually allocate his paycheck between G&A and cost of goods sold, and also allocate the payroll tax component between G&A and cost of goods sold. And then you're able to actually generate a report where the entire payroll can be, when you book the journal entry, it's automatically done by a Paychex or an ADP for you between cost of goods sold. And the importance of that is that you get a truer sense of what your true margins are.
That's also important if you're building a sales team, because you're going to do it based on gross profit, which you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. So the thing about finance and accounting outsourcing, it kind of goes back to what Danny says. You got to figure out what the rules are and procedures and the policies. Great question on revenue recognition. Have to understand revenue recognition. Have to understand when expenses are going to be recorded. And you have to create all these, work with somebody to create all these policies and procedures. And then you go out and find the person to follow the policies and procedures. It's also recommended that you document it as much as this is possible, because there's a lot of turnover in the finance and accounting industry. So if there's turnover, you want to be able to hand somebody a book as opposed to have to explain to them all over again.
Yeah, and what you want to find is really, it's not one size fits all, right? So there are a lot of options to outsource or to manage your bookkeeping and accounting. You can hire someone in-house, but that person's going to have payroll taxes taken out, that person's going to take vacation, they're going to get sick, their kids might get sick. You have to think about when you're outsourcing, okay, do I want to outsource to a local bookkeeping firm? Do I want to be able to go and meet with someone who may be charging me hourly to meet? Or do I want to be able to meet with them virtually? Or am I forward thinking in the technology space, and I think that there's technology that can handle most of this for me? So there's all those different options, and I think that feeds probably pretty well into the payroll and PEO side of things too.
Yeah, so it's a combination of technology, process, procedure, and handling getting the right people, and identifying what type of person you need. So if you're a startup company and you're terrible at bookkeeping, then you may want to get a small person or a small shop to handle all your bookkeeping needs. But the thing is, if you're a small company that's going to be growing quickly, you may want to hire something a little bigger than what your needs are now, because you don't want to have to 18 months later have to go searching and starting the whole process over again. So sometimes it's better to hire a little bigger than to hire small and then save some money. But again to Danny's point, you need to spend a lot of time in terms of putting together the processes and understanding what the accounting issues are, the tax issues. Again, spend a lot of time focusing on understanding what your margin is and determining what cost factors goes into margin, because that's important. You need to know how much money you're making, what the gross margin is on your profit, on what you're doing.
Scalability, each business unit is really important. You know, which business units are higher gross profit.
So let me give you an example. So for example, there's companies that we refer that do outsource, what we call like outsourced bookkeeping. They go anywhere from just basic outsourced bookkeeping. So we have a woman that's really great. She's a one-person shop, all the way out to a company like Growth Force, which is he's also an EO member, that has a company that has got a suite of people that work for him. He's more controller level service. So his end product is a formal closing of the books with financial statements and KPIs and a whole 9 yards, and sit down and detailed analysis of what your company did that month. He does that every single month. So you have to decide where on the scale do you fit in. Are you the basic, just need somebody to come in once a month and just bang it out for you, or did you want the control level services, or are you going to gradually build up to it?
Exactly. And do you want that once a month or once a quarter or a year come tax time, or do you want it in real time? Right? So there are those services out there that are going to provide you that insight into your business, not just what happened last month, but what's happening right now, and alert you to what might happen in the future. And then just covering off on the process detail, you want to create your own internal processes, but you also want to find a company that can match you on those processes or help you become better. There's local accounning firms that you'll work with and that will learn your processes as much as they possibly can and document them. There are also companies like Scale Factor that have the internal system to actually create that documentation and automate most of those processes internally, so that you're not relying on a single person or a small team of people that might not show up to work that day or be sick or have to take a vacation.
And one last thing I'm going to throw out here, a piece of advice for you guys: do not hire an accounting firm to do your bookkeeping. Hire an accounting firm to do your accounting, your tax work. hire a bookkeeper to do your bookkeeping. If you hire an accounting firm to do your bookkeeping, it's going to get expensive.